So if you are flying high, you are doing really well, or you are being very successful.
That's right.
You're flying high. You're doing great. For example, the singer has been flying high ever since she released her last album. She's doing great. She's
an interesting
fantastic.
expression. Why? I mean, just because you're high doesn't mean things are going okay.
It just
always.
means you're up in the air. You're on top.
There's less danger of hitting a mountain if you're flying high.
If you feel really good, though, you do get the sense that
you're kind of being lifted up. Yeah.
Whereas if you feel bad, you're down.
The wind beneath my wings.
So there we go.
Anyways, let's get back to the article. It says, unfortunately, 3 dangerous plane crashes taught airplane designers this lesson. So they learned that round windows are safer because of some crashes, all right? That's why we're using this adverb unfortunately. We can also use the adjective unfortunate. Here we're adding the ly to make it an adverb. It's a long word. Pay attention. Un, fortunately, fortunately. Unfortunately. Basically, it just means unluckily. Things worked out in a bad way. We had some bad luck. Things went wrong in some kind of way. We can also actually take off the and say fortunately. So things did work out. We got some good luck. So fortunately, it didn't rain. Unfortunately, we forgot our sunscreen, so we got a sunburn. So good luck, bad luck. For example, we could say, unfortunately, Kevin didn't get the job he applied for. Bad luck.
And we often use unfortunately to introduce bad news or a bad situation. And this was 3 crashes.
Plane crashes are bad news.
Crash here is a noun spelled C-R-A-S-H, crash.
Yep.
And it's an accident of some kind, usually between vehicles, maybe hitting each other. But when we say plane crash, we mean where a plane either lands badly, flies into the sea. You know, a plane crash is a horrible event and nobody wants to see it happen. And there were 3 bad ones. Let's use crash in a sentence first. There was a terrible plane crash a few years ago when a plane leaving Taipei's Songshan airport hit a bridge and ended up in the river. Of course, it made the news. People even caught some of it on camera.
That's right.
It was a terrible plane crash.
It was. Planes do crash, but of course scientists, engineers, and the pilots work very hard to make sure that doesn't happen often. Well, what does it say in the article? It says the world's first commercial plane or commercial jet plane actually was called the Comet. That was the name of the plane, the de Havilland Comet, built by a British company. Very impressive plane at the time, super fast, and it had jets. It didn't have those old propellers that were loud and slow.
Very impressive knowledge.
Thank you very much. So this was a commercial plane. When we talk about things being commercial, this adjective, first it's spelled C-O-M-M-E-R-C-I-A-L. We're talking about something that's used in business. It's used to make money. We're using commercial planes because we're not talking about military planes. Of course, since World War I, they've had planes fighting in wars, shooting, bombing, attacking, things like that. But this wasn't anything about that. It was about people and suitcases and taking tourists on holiday and shipping, letters and packages around the world. It was done to make money. Because it's commercial, it's about business and money making. For example, the band had a lot of commercial success. It produced 3 best-selling albums. So they made a lot of money. They were a good business, basically.
So let's take a look at the word comet. A comet is an icy rock that flies in an orbit, which means it follows the same path through space, and often releases gas that forms a long, bright tail behind it. One of the most famous ones you can see in the sky is Halley's Comet, or Halley's Comet, which appears every few hundred years. Okay, let's get back to the article. It continues, however, this plane model experienced 3 terrible crashes between 1953 and 1954, a few years after its first flight. So this model means this type of plane, and in that 1 year between 53 and 54, 3 of them crashed. That is terrible.
There you go.
Okay.
3 crashes in 2 years is a lot.
Yeah, let's start a plane business. That'll work. Oh, the planes keep crashing.
Especially for a very new plane. There's a lot of mystery about what was going on.
Yeah, so it was found when they examined the wreckage and looked at everything, it was found that metal fatigue was responsible for the crashes.
That's right.
Which is interesting because fatigue is a word we normally use to talk about tiredness.
Oh, I'm so tired.
Okay. Really, really
Feeling
extreme tiredness. So mental fatigue is your brain, physical fatigue is your body being tired. Here, we're talking about metal fatigue. But if it's metal, how does it get tired?
Very, very good question. Well, metal fatigue occurs when small weaknesses in an airplane's metal body quickly worsen under pressure. So these would appear as tiny cracks. Maybe you couldn't even see them with your eyes. You need a microscope to see them. These would be the weaknesses, the places where the metal wasn't quite as strong. And as the plane goes up and down and gets hot and cold,
pressure,
it gets tired and the cracks get bigger and bigger and bigger until pop, basically it rips apart and bad things happen when you're 20,000 feet up.
Sense.
Eventually, it says they lead, these little weaknesses, these little cracks, the metal fatigue leads to an airplane's body falling apart in the skies. I remember there's one in the Mediterranean. It took off from Rome and just broke up. And of course, it happened so quickly, no one could call and say, we're breaking up, or, this is happening. It just disappears, basically.
Yeah, it falls apart, which means it breaks into many pieces. Like if you had some really old clothes, they would just start to fall apart. The seams would come undone, bits would fall off, and so on. So there was their problem. They had metal fatigue. So they have to keep working on it. The article says, after thorough examinations, it was discovered that 70% of an aircraft's stress under pressure, so all this pressure it suffers when it goes up, originated from the plane's window corners. So that's a huge 70% is a big figure, and it's all coming from the corners. And they learned this after thorough investigation.
Okay, thorough, or thorough, as a North American might say, is an adjective spelled T-H-O-R-O-U-G-H, thorough or thorough. Basically, if something is done in a thorough way, it's done in a complete way. You don't miss anything, you don't skip anything, it's 100% done. If you're sick and you go to the doctor and you say, oh, doctor, I'm sick, and he says, open your mouth, and you go like this, and he says, oh, you have this. You're like, but how do you know? You didn't check my whole body. You just looked in my mouth for 2 seconds. That wasn't a very thorough check, right? So if you're going to see a doctor and you really don't know what's wrong, you want them to check you from head to toe, every part, do all sorts of tests, do a thorough investigation or a thorough health check that covers 100% of your body to make sure they don't miss anything. For example, the mechanic at the garage gave my car a thorough checkup. He checked every part of my car.
So they did all these thorough examinations.
They did an amazingly detailed check.
Start to finish, check everything, test everything, and they found that 70% of all this stress that it gets under pressure, these aircrafts, originates from the window corners. To originate means it comes from, it starts from, it begins from a particular place. So like they're here. This is where it's starting to go wrong. This is where our problems begin. They spread out from there, but this is where they originate. That's where they start.
That's right. And these findings, what they discovered after testing these planes, led to a general improvement in the safety of air travel. So it was a failure as a plane, but by investigating it, the British authorities did a very, very good job. And a lot of the science that they used to find out why the plane crashed, they still use today. So they did a fantastic sort of detective Sherlock Holmes police job to find out what happened. Unfortunately, the plane never really recovered. And then the Americans invented the 707 a few years later. They took over commercial airplanes.
Hey.
Ah, well.
Never mind. There we saw the word findings, and we make sure that we use this as a plural noun with the S because it's the results of an investigation or experiment, and there's pretty much always more than one. So we say, what were the findings? What were the results? What were the discoveries? These are the things you find out. We could use this a particular finding, so you can use it in the singular, but more often we use the plural. What were the findings from this experiment, this survey, this test?
That's right. By getting rid of a window's angles, those sharp edges like a square, and making it round like a circle instead of square, plane designers corrected this serious problem. It's the same reason that an egg or a circle is quite a strong shape, but a square is quite easy to, knock over because those angles have to carry a lot of weight, whereas with a circle, it's spread out all around.
Okay, well there we use the phrase get rid of something.
Rid of those angles.
Yep, to get rid of something means to stop using it or to throw that thing away. You might get rid of your old clothes by throwing them out. You might get rid of this particular feature of a design. We're going to stop using it, stop putting it there.
Absolutely. And an angle is spelled A-N-G-L-E, A-N-G-L-E. This is something you might be familiar with from math class, from measuring triangles and squares and things like that. If we see two lines that are joined like this, what's the angle in here? Of course, it would be 90 degrees. That's the angle. If we talk about the angle around a full circle, that's 360 degrees. It's the space in that gap between two lines joining, for example. We could say a square has four angles of exactly 90 degrees. 4 times 90, 360. There's that number again.
Yeah, it's a key number. So they figured out that they had to make all the windows round, and that's why it's much safer to take a plane these days.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that is the end of our second fun fact, so it's now time for our For You Chat question.